While Octopath Traveler 2 may not be the most original game of all time, it's absolutely bursting with ambition. The game is able to squeeze in so many concepts and ideas that the game is full to bursting with a gluttonous amount of content. While this admittedly often slows the game's pacing down to a crawl at times, I can't help but marvel at the sheer effort that went into making this game not only ludicrously long, but also delightfully deep. To paint a picture of just how much ground Octopath is able to fit into its files, you need only to look at the archetypes present in the towns scattered across the continents. Octopath can go from Western to Eastern, from medieval to modern, from capitalist to religious. Octopath also desperately tries to break free of standard JRPG tropes, from a storytelling and setting perspective anyway. The game doesn't rely on a group of people coming together to stop a common foe. It's about an anthology of tales that coalesces into a sweeping finale, which feels epic because of the prior 50 hours' focus on individuality, though I am partial to Particio's philanthropic promotion from his Parnivorous period. The world, as previously mentioned, is bustling with a wide variety of archetypes that, from one perspective, make the world gel together as well as sumo wrestlers covered in oil, but alternatively, this makes it so that the game is able to surprise you with the next trope it's going to pull out of its hat, as the next town could look like anything you could imagine. It's a shame that it plays nearly all of those cards in the first 10 hours, but I suppose it can't be helped. But I've danced around the point enough. What is Octopath Traveler 2's best mechanic? Well, to me personally, JRPGs are the genre most in need of a giant overhaul in the modern era. In the same way that the general public complains that live service and open world games are overdone, I moan that JRPGs are all beginning to blend together, especially turn-based ones such as today's subject. This is why I get excited when modern JRPGs do something unique and different, and also why Persona 5 is my favourite JRPG of all time, as there's nothing quite like it. Nothing can match its exuberance, tone, setting, and confidence, neatly all wrapped up into one game. But you can't apply the Persona 5 formula to JRPGs as a whole, as that requires an insane amount of effort in a genre that already takes years to write, let alone make. But over the years, I've seen more and more JRPGs have cute little ideas that I think should become genre standards. Stuff like backfill experience, auto-battle, overworld encounters, 30-hour campaigns, and buying levels for weaker party members. Now, admittedly, Octopath Traveler 2 fails at nearly all of these quality of life improvements made to the genre over the past 20 years, with no backfill experience being particularly painful for pacing, but this is intentional. As is shown through the presentation of the game, Octopath 2 is meant to be a classic Super Nintendo JRPG brought into the modern era. But this doesn't mean it lacks new ideas, or even ideas that improve the quality of life. Octopath Traveler 2's crowning achievement, and the feature it contributes to improving the JRPG genre as a whole, is its day-night cycle. What this mechanic does is let the player tune the game to their preferences on the fly. While Octopath 2 lacks difficulty settings, it still lets the player change the game to their tailored experience. Having the daytime only produce weaker enemies is the perfect excuse for exploration. Octopath gives the player a choice between a hardcore and normal mode by letting them adjust the world to their own preferences. The benefits of nighttime are more formidable enemies, which leads to more experience points. So in essence, Octopath lets the player choose between an exploration mode, where battles are less arduous, and the player is free to search for treasure leisurely. When combined with the infrequent encounter rates when walking, and the incredibly direct approach of its dungeon designs, combat becomes an afterthought, and a mode designed for grinding levels, which you'll need in order to stay ahead of the myriad of boss battles Octopath presents you. From a design perspective, it's quite brilliant. Letting players tailor their encounters based on their current objective allows for the game's pacing, which in all honesty is quite terrible, to be slightly set by the player, and it makes sure that the player isn't punished for wanting to explore by being bombarded by enemies they can't handle. The difficulty isn't something I generally look for during random encounters in my JRPGs, unless of course you have the words Shin, Megami, and Tensei in your title. But this is a difficult balance because weaker enemies mean a lesser yield of experience points. So by giving the player essentially 2 different encounter rates for every area, the difficulty, pace, and desire of each dungeon is up to the player, which is a beautiful piece of agency to give to your audience. As for applying it to the genre as a whole, it would have to be situated in a narrative reason for most games. Perhaps the world of demons could fluctuate in Shin Megami Tensei games, and maybe the legendary Pokemon distorts reality to strengthen encounters. What I like about the day-night cycle in Octopath is how it also ties into the narrative of several characters. In the game, night represents a significant threat in stories like Ochette and Temenos', so having this reflected through the gameplay is an excellent way of integrating your themes into your mechanics. Octopath Traveler II is a classical JRPG through and through, but this doesn't make it outdated or stale. It's still able to bring new ideas to the table despite being based on games so far in the past. While it continues to be plagued by a lack of innovation other games have brought forward in the preceding years, Octopath 2 is another example of Square Enix making another exemplary JRPG.